She's got a way about her. I don't know what it is, but I know that I can't live without her.
In a while. I feel like it's about time. This is my favorite way of journaling, like I've said before, just because it's easy to talk out loud about these kind of things. I've been starting a blog, put the link in the description, because I think that's a very authentic place where I've been kind of info dumping a lot recently, but there's some stuff that I thought was pretty powerful that's been on my head recently, so I thought this would be the best medium for transmitting some of those to the general public, because I always think these are meant to like help other people. So what I wanted to talk about today is, so I've never read this book. I still haven't read it. I can't bring myself to actually read it. I've like skimmed it, but it's a pretty heavy book. But story time before I introduce the title of the book. One time when I was walking around Apple Butter, which is like, if you're not from Berkeley, it's like a festival in our town every year to celebrate apple butter. And a lot of times, you know, there's always people standing around on the street giving out little Bibles and stuff. And I found this flyer near one of those guys, this little tiny flyer that said, "God allows U-turns." And I didn't know it was the title of a book, but it looked like this. And I was in a really rough spot, and this book wasn't just on deck for the video, by the way. This is a bookshelf. But, I found that, and I was at a really rough spot in my life, and it kind of gave me a lot of hope. And then I looked it up, and I found out that it was a book, and I got it. And I was like 12 then, and I think that that's like the turning point in my life when I started really trying to like find God somewhere, because I was really lost. But it actually wasn't my first like awakening kind of, you know, religious experience. The first time that I ever really started giving a shit was when I was 11. So this is kind of a heavy story too, but I was 11 and I was really depressed back then. That was like when my mental illness started coming into fruition, I think. And I had tried to kill myself by suffocating, which is silly because your survival instincts kick in and it's just not going to work. But I tried because I was a silly kid and didn't know a better way. And when that happened, I felt like I was saved. Even though I know that it's like, you know, your survival instincts, there's plenty of science to back it up, that people would discount this. And I don't really care because it's true. It's true. That is true. You can believe that that's the only reason. But I literally felt like, you know, I had withstood the first pang of like, I need to get out of here, because I was just like, I felt like I had no breath left, and I was just, you know, exhaling pain and inhaling pain, and felt like I passed out, and I felt kind of like the opposite of that falling feeling when you're half asleep. It was like a jolt of life, and I felt like I saw Jesus, and he basically was like, stop your shit right now. Like, you're not alone. I'm here. Even if there's nobody else, I'm here. So, like, you just gotta stick it out, and I'm here with you, and, like, I'll stay with you all night, and you'll be okay in the morning. And I kind of did feel that way. I didn't see him after that, but I just felt it. And I never stopped feeling it after that, that there was always just something there, and that I really wasn't alone, even if that's all I had. And then the next year after that, I found that, and found the God Allows U-Turns flyer. And it reminded me, like, hey, you've already been through this once. Stop getting lost. Like, you have this. Like, this is always there. You feel it. You know. And so, like, tune back into it. let it come through you, let it help you, and stop like running against God's will, you know, because that always ends shitty, because it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna work out. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of, you think you're miserable and you're gonna keep making yourself miserable, and you're not gonna want to do the right things because you feel like you can't. And so that this feeling was like a burst of hope for me, that I can do it. You know, the like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's kind of true. It is true. And in my opinion. And so then when I was 12, I started really trying to get into like praying and things. I didn't go to church because I was afraid. You know, somebody like me, I didn't think that it would go over well, which I've since learned is not true. But at this time, I wasn't going to church, but I was trying really hard to pray and things. And I remember the very first time after that I had like a religious feeling of like experience. I was laying in the dark, and it was like, you know, I was about to go to bed. I was, like I said, I was like 12, and oh, my Mac's about to die. We got 10%. We're gonna make this work. Okay, try not to ramble too much. I was laying in the dark, and I was like, God, please, like, answer me. Like, if you can hear me, please say anything. Like, I need you now more than ever. And because I was getting bullied really bad, I didn't feel good in my home life. I just felt probably at my lowest. I still feel like when I was in like 7th grade, that was like the hardest time of my life. People really underestimate how bad the public school system and like middle school can be, because kids can be evil. And so I was like, please, like, you said it, even if you're the only thing that's there, you would be there, so where are you? And I kind of heard, like, you know, just kind of like an answer, a vague, like, I'm here, what do you need? And I was like, what do you want me to do? Like, what is the point of, like, being Christian? Like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to learn? Like, what is the point of any of this? And he just said, I just want you to learn to love yourself. And once you do that, you know, you can apply it to others in a healthy way, because, you know, I was trying so hard to be uplifting, and, like, I was in stuff in school. I was in student council and, like, the newspaper staff and stuff, and I was trying to be, like, a light in everybody else's life, but I just had so much darkness in me that I definitely didn't love myself back then. And so he just kept telling me that. And I was like, well, I'm going to need strength for that. And he just kept saying, you're already strong. You're already strong. And then I was like getting frustrated, because I was like, I know I'm not. But I was. And then it started, you know, I started doing better. I was making a lot of progress with that, with trying really hard to love myself and heal from a lot of the stuff that had happened in my childhood and things that I've talked about. But when I was 14, it was another really low spot, and I had attempted suicide again, but this time it was really bad. It was overdose. And so I remember that experience. I don't want to go into the details of it just because I don't want to trigger anybody, but it was a really hard experience. And so when I was like, felt like I was dying from like the pills and stuff, I was laying in bed and I felt so heavy. I felt like I was made of stone. And then I, like, you know, basically was like passing out, and I felt like suddenly I was light. I was made of light, like I was floating, which you could also say was like tripping and things, but it was different. So I felt like I was floating, and I felt like I saw the light that everybody describes in a really true, like, near-death experience. I saw the light, and I heard God say, like, you're dying. You are dying. Like, congratulations, you got what you wanted. Are you sure that you want this? Like, and, you know, I saw the, like, my life flashing before my eyes, like, kind of vague, like, almost like, in A Christmas Carol, when you see, like, the future, I was thinking of, like, what would happen after, and it all just really hit me, and he's like, I don't do this much, but sometimes I do. Like, you can come back. I know that you're worth it. Like, do you want to turn around? And I was like, I was sitting there and I felt like I couldn't talk, and then suddenly, it's almost like it was involuntary. I remember just being like, I don't want to die. I want to live. I want to try. And I was just like, I'm sorry. And then I felt like I came back, threw up for like 10 minutes straight, and then passed out for 3 days. But I survived. I felt like I was really saved. And then I still battled with religion for a long time. I didn't think, I knew that God was real. I knew that I couldn't discount, like, experiences that I've had. And I had talked to God a lot after that. Not that I think I'm a prophet or anything, but I think anyone can hear him talk, like, answer you if you listen. It even says that in the Bible so many times. Those people can't be any more special than us. They were just human, like, the chosen ones and things. Not that I think I'm special. I think that everybody, like I said, if you listen, it is there. And so I think that, I was trying to make sense of it, because I didn't want to join, like, an organized religion, because I thought there were, all of the issues with that, and I still see issues with it. But, to me, at the time, I thought the cons outweighed the pros, and so I was still trying to figure it out on my own, but I didn't want to identify as Christian, because, like, it had an icky taste in my mouth, so I was just trying to, like, I thought I was into, like, Taoism and stuff. I thought that God was just, like, the energy that flows through everything, and in a way I think it is, that's the Holy Spirit and everything, but I thought that that's all it was. It was my intuition, it was my own thoughts in my head that I was just crazy, and I am, but I thought that it was just like anything else. I thought that, that I was making it all up, and that, God was just some sort of force, kind of like in Star Wars. I didn't think that anything would ever come of it, that it was somebody that I could actually talk to and trust and rely on. And then recently, I'm 20 now, so for a long time I was still kind of wishy-washy with how I felt about it. And then recently, a few months ago, when I was living in New York, I was living with a family who was Catholic, and I had really realized that a lot of the people in the community aren't as judgmental as they seem like. I felt very welcomed at first by that family, and I felt like I learned a lot from them about how they see the world and how they see religion and how they see Jesus and God and everything, and it started making a lot of sense. They gave me a rosary, which I still have, the one that they gave me, even though I'm not really on the best terms with this family anymore, but I still have it tied around my backpack. It was one from my ex's grandma, so I really, really cherish it, and I'm blessed that they gave it to me, because it's, very special. It's had a lot of Hail Marys done on it, and so I started practicing, but I hadn't gone to Mass or anything. I still was, like, afraid. I thought maybe they were an exception, that, it was impossible that everybody could be as nice as them. And then I had to go home because of a breakup, and I was in my childhood home again, and I felt like that was actually probably my lowest point. Like, I felt like I was a kid again. I was, like, back in that place. So maybe it was, like, the same amount of low, but again, and I felt like, at this age, your mental illness is peaking. I felt like I was just stuck in, like, a psychotic episode. I couldn't get out of it. I felt miserable, and I just couldn't do anything. I was just, like, crying and screaming and sleeping, and then I remembered how good I felt when I was practicing and trying really hard to learn and, like, researching about the saints, and, like, I actually was, like, trying to read the Bible cover to cover when I was there, so I came back into that mindset where I was like, okay, so, oh, by the way, the God Allows U-Turns poster, I've always had it, like, in plain view around, like, my desk or something, so that's where it was. So I kept looking at it every day and being like, I've got to come back from this somehow, and that was the only way that I felt, redeemed before, was, like, turning to God, because I literally had nothing else. I was in between jobs and everything, and, was going through a lot of my trauma again. I had no friends around, and so I turned to that, and it really did help. I started, doing my Hail Marys, and I kept reading the Bible and, you know, trying to find peace in it somehow, and I started to. And then I went to Mass for the first time. I had gone to church when I was really little, but it was a Southern Baptist church, and maybe that's why I have an icky taste in my mouth about it. But I started going to Mass, and I actually felt really accepted the first time that I went there. Like, I had pink hair, and they didn't, like, even think about it. I had my piercings, I had my tattoos, and they were just glad to see me there. And this guy was, like, this guy who was a part of the, is it the procession or something? The pulpit, I don't remember. That's where the pastor lives, isn't it? I don't remember. I don't know all of the terminology and things. Still don't know the mantras that everybody says. Like, it feels kind of culty sometimes, but I love it. I love the community. It's so powerful. But anyways, still learning. I haven't gone to my RCA classes yet. But he was like, I love to see new people come in because you can tell that they're just so hungry for it, and like they're like dying for answers, and you know, this is where you find it. So I'm always like, you know, glad to help. I want you to get into it if that's what you want. And then I got so overwhelmed by like how powerful it was that I couldn't go back for a little bit. I had a lot going on in my life, and it was just like I felt like I couldn't process another like thing on top of all the stuff I was going through. But then I snapped myself out of it, and I was like, what kind of logic is that? Like, that will help you with the rest of the stuff you're going through. So I went to Mass again the other day. I also felt guilty because they sent me a letter that said they were praying for me and they wanted me to come back. So they remembered me just from that one experience, and that was really touching. So I went back the other day, and I think this was actually the most powerful thing that I've experienced kind of with religion. Was I was there, and okay, so this is helpful. This is like one of the books of devotions where you can just like read verses and not have to like go through the whole Bible. So it has a lot of really powerful stuff in here. But I was sitting there like waiting for Mass to start, and I flipped to a random page, and the first thing I saw was, yes, Joseph?
I love you.
I love you too. The first thing I saw was, I have chosen you from the world, says the Lord, and have appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last. Hallelujah. So I was like, here we are again, me being like having a calling for this kind of thing. So obviously I'm wanted and well received even by God, who's watching me struggle with this. And the pastor, when it started, they love their music therapy is what I like to call it. They were doing their hymns, and the first thing they did was like, can't remember all the lyrics, but it was like, I am chosen, and I was like, oh my God, this is like such a coincidence. Like, I feel very a part of something. I feel like I was like called upon to like, you know, go through this to really like find God again and be saved or whatever. So I was thinking about that, and then when the pastor actually started preaching, the first thing they were talking about was like how like the lost people deserve mercy, the sinners deserve mercy, and you know, just talking about, of course, like that's what Jesus died for, and how, you know, none of us are worthy. And I felt so good actually, because like everybody, like even like the Karens, were just feeling how much of a piece of shit we all are. So I felt like I was finally on level playing field with anybody else, and I was like, this is why Catholics can't judge me, because they all hate themselves. But not really, they don't hate themselves. It's kind of the whole point of what I'm trying to learn. So I was like, okay, so we all like make mistakes, and I felt very like, I felt okay. And it was just talking about how, you know, the humble are blessed and everything. And I was like, well, that's me, I'm humble as fuck. And then while we were praying, I was just thinking, and I was like, God, will I be saved? And he's like, you're already saved. And I was like, well, like, can I have strength? Because I always ask for that. And once again, he's like, you already are strong. And I was like, well, help me see my own light then. And he was like, you know, a kind of answer that didn't have any words. I just felt it, and I've always felt like, you know how people describe walls around your heart? I feel like with everything that's happened to me, I have so many walls that it's more like there was just cement, like, encasing my heart, like someone dipped it into a sidewalk and just left it. And so I felt like it was, like, cracking open, like I could physically feel my heart in my chest cracking open, and, like, light pouring in, but also the light burned, like it hurt, that I felt so vulnerable. Like I was actually coming to life, and it transforming, and it hurt. It really hurt. And then I was on my way home, and I was listening to music, and I was thinking about my life and all of the blessings that I have, you know, like my family, my chosen family, and like, you know, who of course one of my favorite parts of it is my boyfriend. So I was thinking about that, and I felt like it all just was ripping apart. Like I felt like pieces being ripped off, and my heart was like bleeding out, and it felt so raw, and it was exposed like flesh. So I felt like I could feel like the air on my heart, and I felt so, like I said, like vulnerable. I felt like I was just, you know, standing bare in front of everybody, and I felt so like a kid again, but in a bittersweet way. I felt free, but I also felt like weak. Like I felt like I was crumbling, but that's because I had so much false confidence that, you know, I am weak sometimes. Like, you don't have to be strong all the time, and accepting that, I felt like a weight off my shoulders, but then I felt, you know, like the fall of, like, the collapse of, I am tired of doing all of that. And so I started remembering what I talked about a lot with my ex, which is that love is pain. Sometimes when you haven't gotten a lot of love, it hurts because it's unfamiliar and you can't trust it, and it reminds you of the times that you didn't have it, and so you're questioning it, and you're not wanting to believe. You know, it just reminds you over and over, this isn't real, I'm not going to be loved, like nobody will understand me, and things like that. So, and then also when you start believing it, it just makes you feel like, why didn't I get this before? And so I talked about that with my ex, but then the thing is that he convinced me that I had never been loved before, that he was the first person who loved me, and that's why our relationship was toxic, because he said that I was going crazy feeling love for the first time, and I know that isn't true, because I know that I have loved before, and unfortunately the people that I know that have loved me, I've lost, and that hurts, and I think that contributed more to my issues rather than never being loved. I don't think that I was never loved. I think that there's plenty of people who love me, so I felt like that was a very, very harmful thing for him to believe so strongly and convinced me of, because I believed it too. So I thought that, like, okay, this person is the only person who's ever loved me. I have to listen to everything they say because, like, they want what's best for me or whatever, and it led me into a very dark place. And that's what I was coming back from when I moved home. And so that misunderstanding was probably the biggest misunderstanding I've ever had in my life. And so I think now, I don't think that this is the first time I've ever been loved, but I think it's the first time I'm starting to actually believe it and accept it, because, well, maybe I did with that person, but it wasn't. Like, that wasn't love, so I think that I'm finally believing it, and that's what hurts so much. And I felt like I had a really rough night last night because I was feeling that way. Like, I was feeling really vulnerable, and so I just kept crying. And a lot of it was tears of joy, but it was also, like I said, bittersweet and, like, painful, so I was just crying and crying a lot, and, like, it felt like my heart completely, like, cracked open. Like, it felt like there was just a heart, and I feel like I'm becoming human again, which might not make sense, because obviously I'm human, but, like, for someone who has borderline, it's really rare for me to feel real, because derealization and, like, dissociating is really prominent in my life, so I started feeling, you know, maybe not for the first time, but rarely human instead of, like, some sort of alien or ghost. And that's a good thing. It's a powerful thing, but it also means admitting, like, that you're only human, that you're weak, that you can't do everything, that you're not a superhero, and that, you know, it's okay for people to be there for you because you want that for everybody else. And so, like, accepting that was really hard, so I felt like I was, like, breaking down from that. And then when I started processing it, like today, I woke up and I felt really great because I felt alive, and that's why I wanted to do a lot today, like this, because I just wanted to remind everybody that, like, when you feel like you're in that place, you have somewhere to go. And I also, I think that people who are lost could find a lot in faith, but I also think that it's not for everyone, so I think that you should just find your faith in anything if you can, even if it's just in yourself. I think that faith in anything is, like, very vital to life. I think that if you don't believe in anything, even if it's not God, if you don't believe in anything, then what are you doing? Like, what, the whole quote of, like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So I think it's really easy to get lost when you don't have anything to follow. Even if you're a leader, like, everybody's following something. Somebody's always above you, even if it's God. So I think that, like, you have to find your thing, your calling, something that you are passionate about, that you believe in, that leads you into light. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. But I also think that when you start feeling that, it feels like, for me, it feels like the beginning of the end, but not in a bad way. I mean, in a good way, like the beginning of the end of hard times. There's always hard times, but I think just my early adulthood has been extremely hard. So I think that I'm finally coming out of it and coming into, like, a new era and new life with new beginnings of really bright things. And I feel like, I don't know, life is good. Life is good. Jesus is good. God's good. God is good. It's the TLDR.